Selling your personal training services can be a big struggle. For most trainers, it can be a big challenge on how to sell yourself, how to show your value, to show how you can help that potential client in front of you. So, how can you do that with boldness, with confidence, and actually love doing that? That is the focus of today's episode of the Solo Trainer podcast. And I'm excited to have a guest with us, Terrell Baldock. She is a sales guru who's going to help us just with this. Hi, Terrell. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for coming and being on the show. Terrell has her own independent training business. She's had it for over 11 years, and she focuses on strength training, strength coaching, and nutrition for women over 40. But not only that, she is a business sales coach for women in fitness and wellness who are ready to grow consistent income without pressure or hustle. After leaving corporate sales and building a global coaching brand from her basement, she created the Brave Sales Revival, where she teaches women how to sell from flow, not force. Terrell helps her clients build confidence, attract ready clients, and create calm, profitable businesses that feel like them. Her calm and brave approach inspires women to lead with integrity. And when she's not coaching, you can find her lifting heavy weights and raising strong kids in Ontario, Canada. All right, Terrell. So, I've sort of found, in order to be successful in your independent business, you really got to be good at three things. And that is one, you've got to be able to generate leads. Two is closing sales. And three is then retaining clients. And trainers, we can be really good at the retaining clients can come easy, but we can't retain them unless we even get them. Right? We even get them in there. So, when trainers really struggle, we struggle with the sales part and feeling confidence. I'm really excited that we're talking about how you can be bold in it. So let's start off with you sort of describing, what does bold selling mean to you? And like, how is that different from being like pushy or aggressive in your selling?
Well, really, it's just being confident and asking for the sale and feeling like you're worth it, right? I think a lot of the times when, we're getting into sale, like, we're not salespeople naturally. We get into this business to help people. So it's the same sort of mindset, right? It's looking at it like it's an extension of your services, not being so aggressive or sleazy or hustly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very interesting mindset shift that I had never thought about before, that it's actually you said like an extension of your services, right? That
Mhm.
you're selling. Kind of expand on that just a bit more. What you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we create our program, and this is going to look a little bit different depending on where you are in your business. But let's say you have your offer, and your main offer is an exercise program. Well, the first step in that process is typically like a sales call. So you would have, your sales call to see if this person meets the qualifications to work with you, see if you guys align to work together. So you're not in there convincing them to work with you. So that's the difference between, like a sales call and an extension of service. So a sales call, or a traditional sales call, or how we think of sales, is more pushy, more overcoming objections, handling objections. Whereas looking at it as an extension of your service, it's more of having a coaching conversation and then that turning into the buying conversation. So it doesn't start off with you, trying to convince somebody to work with you. It's really looking at seeing if the two of you are aligned to work together. And then once you determine, yeah, this is someone that I want to work with, this is someone that wants to work with me, then you tend to go into what they're going to get out of the program. And that's kind of where that pricing presentation comes in. So if you're taking that step back and saying, this is a part of my program, or this is like the free option of my program, then it makes it much easier for you to get into the mindset of moving them to the next step. But when you're looking at, sales as a way to convince someone to buy your service, then that's where you find yourself, like I said, overcoming objections or objection handling, feeling like you've got to convince someone to work with you. So when I work with my clients, and I guess this is a little bit long-winded, but when I'm working with my business coaching clients, we start with the offer. And we work our way back to that sales conversation so that the process is aligned step by step so that the client journey matches from, first contact or your sales call all the way to your onboarding process and your coaching.
So, if I'm understanding, a big part of this is that you are creating a process instead of. So that's one thing that I want us to go back to that, because I think that that's a key thing that people have got to figure out how to develop. And you're starting to share what they can do to help craft and create that process. Because when you have a process, you can be more confident in your selling. But not having, like, coming with the idea that you're not, when you're first talking with someone, you're not trying to convince them that they ought to work with you. It's sort of having that just natural, intriguing conversation with them about what they're looking to achieve, trying to get more information out of them. And kind of leave the sales part aside because until later, like you're just not, and then not again of all the objections, because the objections can be there. We've all experienced different objections, and how to deal with them can be kind of challenging. And I think the thing is that if you're too much focused on the objections and how to handle those, people, it's not going to go well. But there's also, in developing this process of bringing it back to the process, you can kind of gather information that can kind of help you, at least I've discovered, to have less objections. Like, you don't even really have either, those common objections that you normally sort of see, which we can kind of go through if we got time about it. Like, you can see that those can get addressed earlier on, so you actually you're not having to worry about them later.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to this process piece. You sort of started it, so let's maybe give specific steps, to help someone. So you're talking about the first step is that initial conversation with someone that you're having to make sure it's a good fit. That you're both, it goes both ways. That's the other part of it. So you would say that's probably step one. So you might want, I don't know if you want to speak more on that, but do that and maybe like keep going on the other parts of the sales process that you've used that's been successful.
Yeah. So, it's funny because, there's a lot of, and you'll see it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, whatever social media channels you use, but they always talk about, like never doing sales calls. Oh, I never have to do sales calls. Do this. You know what? Like, do the sales call. do this, because it is honestly the best first impression you can give to your person. It shows that you're willing to show up for them. It shows that you care enough to show up for them. And taking that time to invest in what they're looking for, in learning about them, and then figuring out what of your programs is the best fit, right? But where I always start is that sales call. Or even taking a step back. What I've also started doing is doing applications because, as you said, like we just don't have enough time in the day as solopreneurs. So, what I'm doing in my very first interaction is getting some basic pieces of information from them just to make sure that they're a good fit for the call. Then we hop on the call, and this is where I'm getting the bulk of the information. But what I want to say here is before digging in and getting information, asking those questions is really starting with building rapport and building the relationship. Um, there's a person on the other side that you're talking to. Let's not look at them as a number or as a client, but just as a person who is genuinely interested in wanting to change their lives, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so starting with building that rapport, maybe it's asking about, their family life. Maybe it's asking, what their favorite treat is if they have a treat. It doesn't have to be so stiff, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be so dry. Um, but then, yes, you want to get into collecting that information from them. So, what their goals are, and the other point that I want to make now that I'm thinking about it is also speaking to the transformation or the desired outcome. A lot of salespeople or a lot of coaches, were taught to speak to the pain points. But in my experience, what I find is when we're talking to the pain points, we're sinking in daggers to people. We don't want them to feel like that on the other end of the call. What we want them to feel is hopeful. We want them to feel hopeful in making a decision that's right for them. If we're speaking to the pain points and, oh, this is wrong and this is wrong, then what's happening is that their guard is getting up, or, they're starting not, how do I want to say this? It,
That maybe it's sort of a turn off for them because
yeah,
they're coming to you to get an answer to their solution. And
yes,
they already know all the things that maybe they're not doing well or could be doing better at. And so we need to be like encouragers. Is that something sort of you would say as far as, um, they're not too far gone or they're not this, that, or the other, to
yeah.
show, again, the humanality or caring, compassion part of it.
Empathy, yeah, just meeting them where they're at. Um, because when we're showing them hope, then they can see that the transformation is possible. But if we're pointing out everything that is kind of going wrong in their lives, then they're going to pull back and be like, well, then what's the point if this isn't going the way it's supposed to, if I didn't do that right? Right. So
Yeah.
we want to speak more to the desired outcome as opposed to the pain points. Now, I know a lot of salespeople would disagree with me on that. Um, but, again, when we're working with people, they have these complicated lives. And the point of that initial consultation or that initial call is to work through all of that and assess all of that. And then from there, when you're putting your pricing or your options together for them, whether you do that live on the call or you take 24 hours and kind of do a price presentation after. But really, getting them to open up and then having them work through some of those objections that they might already have on their own. And that's really the point of getting them to open up. Right. So again, we're not looking into, jumping right in and saying, buy my stuff. We're working on building that connection first. And if the connection feels right, then you move on to the next steps. But if it doesn't feel right, then you go back and go over the steps that you've missed, whether it's, building rapport, asking your open ended questions, figuring out what their goals are, and then, seeing that, if that connection is there or that rapport is there. I find if that rapport isn't there, um, then that's where you can also run into, more objections just because the trust hasn't been built yet. So I guess what I'm saying is that the first initial meeting is really to build that trust and that connection. If it's there, great. If not, then, you kind of have to decide if this is someone that I want to work with or someone that, maybe is not the right fit for my program.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard thing that we want everybody to like us, but we have to be honest if we don't, with that individual, if we don't feel like it's a good fit. Because if in your gut, if your intuition is telling, I just don't feel like this is right, and you guys continue to move forward, I've done this plenty of times, and that client starts to work with me and then they don't end up lasting, and it kind of like, and then sometimes you start dreading work. Like, it sounds horrible, like I'm just saying, but you find that we all just don't get along with everybody, right? So we're not a good fit for everyone, and you don't want to be wasting each other's time. And I know, especially when you're building your business and you're trying to grow it and you're like, I'm needing clients, you're not taking someone because it's a good fit is always best in the wrong run, because usually it ends up not being, you don't enjoy working with each other, they don't last very long, and then you're like, okay, well, now I've got to find somebody else and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
um there are other people that are going to come along. So if you don't feel it's a good fit, I think that's a great suggestion. What you're sharing is like, be open, honest, because again, it's both. It's both.
Mhm.
It's not you. You're not, again, trying to convince the other person that they need you. It is seeing if this is a good fit is one of the aspects of it. So you're saying, so this great suggestions on this initial conversation that you're having with someone. I think one of the other things that you brought up was that you have them kind of fill out a form beforehand to get some information from them. I think that's also a great, because so leading into that call, you can already have some ideas of questions you want to ask and how it might go based on answers. Uh, so that's definitely something like, if you have either, the person's been referred to you, and you've connected and you've scheduled a time, somehow you can send them a link to a form, or if it's on your website that they fill out. I have, a couple questions on my intake form that they can email me beforehand. And I think the other thing about this initial conversation and call, why it's so important too, is people, I guess because it goes to trust, is that they really want they are happy to talk with somebody a lot of times about what they're struggling and dealing with, versus, when they can get some feedback on it and that kind of thing. Because you might have a great stuff all on a website and testimonials, but when they get to hear and interact and talk with you and be like, oh, I really feel connected, it goes a really long way, that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So step one, we're talking about that initial conversation. And then what would you say is next after that?
So there's the initial conversation. Then, yeah, we go into the offer and the price presentation. So for me, I have an offer stack. So I typically will try to find an offer or a program that's most aligned to my client and her goals. Um, so based on our conversation, we transition into, okay, you know what, you're an awesome fit and I'd love to work with you. Here's what that will look like going forward. Here's, the program, the expectations of you, everything that they get, what have you. And then you're also wanting to get their excitement too. So it's like, so what is the best part, what's your most favorite part of everything that I just shared? What excites you the most? Because you want to get them excited. You do want that buy-in, right? Because when they're excited, they're excited in themselves. They're excited because they believe that somebody finally has something that's going to help them. Um, so I go into, this is what this looks like. Here's the pricing details. And depending on this person and the way our conversation goes, I'll recommend, I generally will recommend a year. Give yourself a year, whether we work together for the full year or not. That might be something different, but I want to plant that seed that, I see this as a long term or a longer term investment, right? Because we're going to work together in helping you get to your goals. And then I'll offer, a paid in full bonus, or paid in full price or a monthly price. And from there, I just let the person rest and digest, because this is where, and I had to learn this for myself, is just be quiet. Do not say anything. Shut up. I would sip water, bite my tongue, just so nothing, because you want to rescue that person, right? You want to be like,
Yeah.
but I want to, but the first person who speaks, and not that it's a competition or anything, but when you're the first person to speak, you're disrupting their thought process, right? Give them the space to think about the things that they need to think about. If they sit there in 10 minutes of awkwardness, you sit there in 10 minutes of awkwardness, you know, but really do your best just to stay cool and calm here. If they have any questions, then you answer them. But what they're trying to do is they're processing not only their praise, but they're processing how they're feeling. And there could be a few emotions or a few things going on, right? So that's why you just want to stay quiet, and wait for them to open up and address things as they feel comfortable opening up. Um, so that's that part. And then what I go into after that, like if they're like, yes, I want to do this. Yes, congratulations, big celebrations. Again, that they're making a really big decision on, changing their lives. And to me, I think it's a really big honor when somebody chooses me. So, of course, when they agree with me, I'm going to get excited because this is a person that I really get to help and that I'm excited to help. And I'm excited to see them grow and do all of these things. And yes, I'm being a little bit selfish because it's supposed to be all about them. But these are things as a coach that I enjoy. And when I'm bringing a new client into my world or renewing a previous or current client, I'm just as excited as they are, and
Yeah.
if we can show that, then that shows that they made a wise decision. The chances of them, having any guilt or anything like that is going to be minimal because you're excited. You're letting them know that you've got something really cool that's going to help them. Yes, it's going to be work, but you're in this together, right? So I guess that's something else, another way that I look at this. It's not like a coach client relationship, it's a partnership and we work
Yeah.
together. So, when I bring on a new client, it's a new partnership and it's actually really exciting, right? So, I guess the mindset tips in there as
Yeah.
well. But
No,
yeah,
there's a lot that you said, I think, because there is I think what can really get us super nervous is when having to talk about pricing and how much our services cost. And when you get to the point of like doing that, um, you've brought up a lot of good points about that, and the fact that, one, you know, I think one thing that helped to me is that, like, this is part of my business. Like, I got to share with you my pricing. Like, you don't question when somebody else tells you about your pricing, but sometimes when we go to share our pricing, we can be scared and nervous about it. But if you're just sort of matter of fact, like, not matter of fact, really, like, okay, and having different offerings is another key thing of having different options for people. You have a certain program that you get people in, and so that there's different, probably, like you said, you've got, like, you can go on a monthly basis, so many more months, and then an annual basis, and that can have some different things. Even the same can apply whether you're just doing one-on-one sessions and they're paying on a per sessions. I have even 3 different offerings for them. You can buy a package of this session, so this sessions or this sessions. And so that can at least, give them, like, okay, maybe I don't want to fully commit to this bigger, more expensive package, but I might start off with this one and just see how it goes. The other part that you're bringing up that I think is real important is sharing about, one, how you really are seeing this as not, it's a long-term thing, like, or not long term, it's not a short-term thing. I think some people also, especially if they've never worked with a trainer before and they're not sure about what it takes to get to their goals, being realistic with them on the expectations of that. You will not be shredded in a month of working with me. I mean, not coming across that way, but you've got to sort of explain the process of those expectations so they have a better understanding of those expectations and what that investment is, because this is a big investment. And I think sometimes being sympathetic with them, to be like understanding that this is a really big investment to be making. Especially, that's one of the things that they say that, if they come back and say that this is not within my price point. But the thing about, I think, also good about go ahead and sharing your pricing at the beginning is it's out there. You're not going further down the road with things, especially if, like, maybe you offer a free complimentary session and then they can make their decision. Let them know your pricing up front. I even encourage, if you're comfortable, put on your website, because if somebody comes through that, they've already seen your pricing, so it's not so much too much of an issue about it. But the silence part, keeping your mouth shut. Once you say your pricing, here are my prices, and then just, maybe even just say which one of those you want to get started with, can kind of be maybe the next question. Which one do you feel best fits for you? And then let there be silence, because then, like you said, we want to rescue them. So we start coming up with trying to convince them more that they need us and all of that. And then that can be a big turnoff. And they could be like, whoa, they need some space to kind of digest everything that they've just heard and consider. And, one of the things that, like, if you offer a comp session, then I like to say is about, once you've said your pricing, to be like, okay, so when can I sign you up for that comp session? When can we get you in for it? Right. And so it already just leads to that being the next thing. And then if they say, okay, well, that's too much, I don't, whatever. But it takes practice to, like, to just, nobody could see me on the camera. You could see me, but I was like close and putting my mouth. It takes practice just to be quiet after you're, like, said your prices, and let them have, then go from there. And then the excitement, I think it is so important to share. And throughout this, of saying how you bring up the partnership piece of this. And this is a partnership. I'm not just, this isn't a try. You're part of my fitness family. I am your, your wellness guru. Like, we're together. Like, this is I keep saying, we said partnership and we said that. So that it helps to kind of reinforce their decision or the value, whatever that you bring. And I'm about you. I think there's nothing wrong with us celebrating when we bring a new client on, because it does. And it gives us so much joy, because we know, I don't know, this is one of my reasons. I just know and even though I don't know specific future for them, but you just know that, like, they're going to be, like, such in a better spot, such in a better place, all of that, after they've been working with you. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm so excited that you're going to get to experience what you've been wanting to, and even more that they didn't even expect with, working on their health and wellness and well-being and fitness and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention, because, yeah, we were talking about the silence piece and, like we need to be quiet. The reason why we want to save people is because we feel uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable. So if you can identify why you get so uncomfortable with that silence, it can really go a long way. So, looking at money mindset. Now, I'm not like a money mindset expert, but this was an exercise that I did a number of years ago, and it just kind of changed how I looked at sales in general. Um, but they were talking about money mindset and about a time where we felt like money made us uncomfortable. And if we can go back, and uncover those triggers, we can work on them and then address them. And then once we start getting more comfortable with the sales presentation, it will become so much easier and so much more natural because your central nervous system is in a place of calm. And I just wanted to bring that up. I know that sounds kind of, out there a little bit, but I'm like a really big person on, being aligned and, being aligned with your sales and being aligned in your business. And this is one way that you can do that with your sales process is just addressing and, figuring out some of your own holdups with money, and, I know that I used to be really uncomfortable with spending lots of money on myself, right? So asking somebody to spend lots of money on themselves just felt wrong to me. But now that I'm in a different place, it's like I can ask, I still sometimes do get uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong, I'm not
Oh,
perfect.
yeah.
Because yeah, there's always that, but a lot of it will come from mindset and how you feel about money and how you feel about sales. And if you feel like sales is something that's dirty, then you're going to just feel wrong and you're going to want to jump in and save your person or save that person in front of you because something doesn't feel good in here, right? So if
Yeah.
we can flip the script, then you will become such a powerful influence in your clients' lives.
Yeah. You're spot on, I think, with that. Of the struggles that we have with talking about our pricing, that does come from something deeper. And you're right. You got to figure out what that is so that you can be confident and you asking bold and like, here's what it is. And I think this it can be more of a struggle for women than for men because we um are not confident in our abilities and what we do and the value that we this of our services. We can be like, am I really like that's a lot of money and am I really worth that? Yes, you are worth it. You are. You have like the experience, the value, all that. It's more you're giving people more than just a workout. And so when you believe if you're like struggling of your value and your worth, that can be what can be maybe be a holdup for you be struggling to talk about confidence, say, hey, here's what I cost, and then being quiet about it and then let them take it. And they can take it or leave it. You know, you don't need to continue to justify why you price what you do. Like if you're feel very confident and believe in yourself, but that can be a struggle sometimes internally of like not really feeling that you're worth that value. So yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So, what is your suggestion for people who are listening on where to get started on this week on what they can do. What are some things that they can start doing to start selling more boldly? What's some powerful actions that they could take, that could, hopefully make a difference in how they sell and hopefully help them also gain more clients.
Talk to more people. And it doesn't have to be. And I know that sounds so simple, but it's hard. It's hard to go out there and initiate conversations with people. So you don't have to be, go coldly talk to people. Write a list of, people in your network. Start with, be bold. Write out 100 people that you want to connect with. You know, not that, or just brain dump 100 people. You don't have to think about it, just brain dump 100 people. Then out of that list, see if there's anybody that's worth connecting to and reach out. If you're on social media and you're posting your content, if somebody is liking or commenting on your posts, reach out to them and say, hey, thanks for liking my post, and start a conversation. If my favorite thing to do is to create resources. So if you have, a 5-step process, you can create like a simple, easy lead magnet and start offering that to people. And then anybody that's interested in that, have a conversation with them, invite them to a call. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. It just starts with like a simple, hello, how are you? Or, just curious, what's your biggest struggle? Or why are you what brought you to my page? There's a million different ways that you can start a conversation. So even just starting a conversation with 5 people a day, and don't make it about sales. Just make it about having that connection. Then follow up with them again, and then follow up with another new 5 people, and then just keep that process going, right? Until you get enough people into your world, whether you're building your email list or your social media networks or your one-on-one, just keep inviting people in. So first step is just, starting the conversation. I think people get into it and they think DMs, for example. We've all gotten those cold DMs like, hey, buy my stuff.
Oh.
Don't go about it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think the point is that the more you do this, the easier it has become. So if you make the point of trying to go out there and have these conversations with people, that's going to help not only increase your network in a way, your potential of a client, which is awesome, but it's going to help you increase your confidence, your boldness in
Mm-hmm.
your process. And we keep bringing back the word of process. So if anything, that through this conversation today, if you're struggling with your sales, you're realizing maybe your process needs to shift. For one thing, you need to shift your process. Think about how that initial rapport, getting questions, asking, talking with them, all that before you're jumping into your pricing, because you're trying to figure out then how can you then show your value and what you can do and what's it like for them to work with you, and here are your pricing, and then asking, being quiet, or asking where do you want to get started with this, and then being quiet, and letting them process that sort of stuff, that hopefully having that process. But is there mindset, we talked a lot about mindset too, is there shifts that you need to make that are getting in your way, of being able to have those confident, bold, conversations with people, because that is a key thing, because if that's really keeps you from um, uh, articulating what you want to say and not fumbling and having issues and all that kind of stuff. And then until you make that shift, it's going to be a struggle, but it's possible. And Terrell and I can both say, I mean, it's a process, but you can find one that works well so that you can be confident. And it sounds on some say that you love it, but if you've got a good process, it just becomes easier. It becomes more natural and a more of a
Yeah.
conversation. And that's what you tend to like about it. And I think then you can get more excited when you're trying to share and show your value, right? So
Well, and the person on the other end doesn't feel like they're being sold to. They feel like it's a conversation and you're two people just, talking about how we're going to help each other get through whatever it is we're trying to get through. Um, but what I wanted to say about talking to more people as well is that the benefit of that, whether they're a yes or a no, the conversations go anywhere, they don't, is that you get clear on your message. The more you talk to people, you refine your process much easier by talking to people. And you're going to find what will work and what doesn't work by just talking to more people. But one of the other skills that I worked really hard to learn early in my business that works with sales is copywriting. You learn how to convey and communicate your message better. But what's also great is that you can save, like literally copy and paste some of those conversations that you have with your people, because that's going to give you the best content, the best insight into what your people are thinking and how they might be feeling. And really if you get a lot of practice with that, even that process becomes natural. You don't have to think about it. It just flows. And that's just really what I like to work towards, is just having things flow. So going from the sales call to the program, the onboarding process, and onward.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you can get clear on your message, then that sales process is going to connect a lot easier.
All right, Terrell, I think this is great advice that you're giving on how to help people create to be more bold in their selling. Thank you so much for joining us today. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, well, you can come and connect with me on Instagram. Super easy, sell with Trell. So come find me. I also have a free Facebook group, the Strength Sales Society. But what I have that will be a great complement to what we talked about today is my Brave Sales Revival checklist. So what this is going to do, it's going to help you walk through my process on how to get centered before your sales calls or grounded before your sales calls, help you kind of get to a place where you feel like you can sell boldly. And the other fun part is that I host monthly master classes. So my next one is selling with flow. So if you sign up for the freebie, or if you want the freebie, you will get some of the details with the upcoming master classes as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and we'll be sure to have the links to that in the show notes and description so that people can sign up for it. So, all right, thank you again, Terrell. I hope to have you back, maybe to share your actual journey as an independent personal trainer, because you have had quite a successful journey and created some programs, and I think people would love to hear about your journey. So I hope you'll come back.
I'd love to.
All right. All right. And anyone else out there, Terrell has a great free resource, so definitely go check that out. But if you are thinking about going on your own, or even if you already have and you're kind of like, I don't know what all I need to do this, because starting your own business, there's a lot to it, and you're wondering what more you need to either do to launch, to grow, to manage your business, then be sure to check out the Solo Trainer Guidebook and Checklist. That's a freebie that I have, and the links for that will be below. It's everything I wish I knew before I was getting started with my business. So, all right, again, thank you, Terrell. And to everyone out there, here's the great that awaits.